Welcome to another edition of Creative Mind, this time in video because we're talking about visual effects and 3D animation. We have Cathrine Tate, who is the director of 3D animation and visual effects, as well as the visual effects supervisor for StudioX. And to her right is Sasha Korellis, who is the head of production for StudioX. Every movie we see, whether it is a Iron Man big blockbuster film to, we're going to talk about Fruitvale Station, has visual effects and animation in it. And Cathrine, explain, what's the difference between the two?
Well, it's not black and white.
Okay.
But what I usually will tell people is that, do you like Avengers and Mandalorian, like the work in those types of films and television programs? That's more visual effects, where you're merging computer-generated elements and different live-action elements together to create one environment in live-action movies.
So the whole world.
Right, and the whole world. And nowadays with streaming and Netflix, I mean, almost every program has visual effects. Some of them might be transparent, and some of them might be more in your face, like in the Avengers films and the Marvel films. But basically, those films have animation in them, but it's more in a live-action environment.
Yeah, 'cause it seems like every film has this great explosion or blood splatter or
that's visual
or
effects.
something going like, hey, how did they
Green
do
screen,
that?
where we key a character out and put them in a different environment. Usually it's an environment that you can't shoot on film at the time. It's something that you have to create afterwards, something supernatural, or it might be just that there was a mistake in the filming process, and you might have to change the time of day, so it's anywhere from the mundane to the really sexy visual effects, like in the Marvel films.
Okay.
Where you've got explosions and characters and that kind of thing.
Okay, and we're going to go through a lot of those films because you guys have worked on a lot of them and set up a lot of them, and that's through StudioX. And Sasha, that's what I want to ask you about. The animation side, the 3D animation, where we're not talking about pen and pencil animation, and then also StudioX. I mean, can you explain, just to give us the quick intro, the world of 3D animation now?
We see 3D animation, the most popular that's also here in the Bay Area is Pixar. So, the films that have been coming out, Soul and just recently Luca, that's all 3D animation. And it's, so it's all computer generated, it's still kind of fantasy, but there's a lot of the same skill sets that you're learning in 3D animation and visual effects. We're using a lot of the same software and we're using a lot of the same skill set, but it's just kind of two different ways of creating this imagery. And so we can go from like the very high end of like what Pixar looks like, and there's so many people that work on it, and it's very in depth, and everybody's very they're very specialized in what they do exactly.
Right. There's the person that does the eyelashes, the person that does the feet.
The people that do like the water and the eyes and the crowds, and the people, the team that did the wave character in Moana is like a whole, it's a crew of creatives and highly skilled technicians as well, and computer scientists. And then we have one of my favorite 3D animation pieces right now is the Bad Batch series coming out of Lucas. And that's just a new continuation series from the Clone Wars and Rebels. And that's all 3D, but it's TV, so it's done really quick and it's fast, and the animation isn't perfect, and the way that it's rendered is a very, very stylized, so it doesn't look real, but there's just something really charming about the characters and all of that. So we're basically, what I love about, what I've always loved about animation and visual effects, and what we do is, in filmmaking in general, is that we're creating magic. We're creating worlds, we're creating, we're taking reality and changing it for the way we want. And even with Cathrine saying, like, we can do, visual effects that are very spectacular, like the Marvel stuff, or do something very mundane. I mean, we've just had a show that was shot in one place and we made it look like Oregon, right? Like we changed the whole background of the shot to make, and like we had Catherine's friend shoot some trees in Oregon, and we created a whole shot that's like not even real. Like half the shot's not real. And so I just feel like that's the thing that I love about what we do, is that we're just making magic all day.
And I think that the thing that is really important to me is that the fact that we're working with filmmakers to help tell a story. No matter what way you do it, you're trying to suspend someone's disbelief. So if you're on Mars, you want the audience to believe you're on Mars.
Right.
And we know how to do that so that it doesn't jar the audience. They may not know what's wrong when they see a bad visual effects shot, but they know they've been pulled out of the environment, right?
Right.
So our mission, and my mission as being a visual effects supervisor is making sure that we serve the story first, and then we let the filmmaker tell their story, and that we're part of that process.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I want to go through just a couple of the films that have gone through the Academy, because that's important, because amazing films are going through the Academy and StudioX, and that we can't forget that careers have been launched, and some of the best movies in the last 10 years are really coming through the Academy, and all the students are getting their hands on them.
We've been very, very lucky at first, and then we have these relationships that keep coming back to us. So we're really, really proud of the level of work we bring in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's we talk about Fruitvale Station. I mean, it's a local story. It's a poignant story. It's launched careers of the director and the actor in it, and
our visual effects artists have been launched by that film.
And that film takes place on the BART station.
Yes.
You don't think of it as visual effects. Quickly walk us through where the visual effects came in on them, and so all of us can go, duh, of course, but how does it work?
Well, I want to start by mentioning that Ryan Coogler, the director, who also obviously is very successful now and directed Black Panther and Creed, at the time it was his first feature, and he was pretty fresh out of USC, and we were contacted by the San Francisco Film Society because he needed some visual effects, and there was no funding for it.
Yeah, the whole budget's what, less than $1 million for the entire film?
Yeah, it was really, really, really tight. So we met with Ryan, and the great thing is we got to meet before they shot the film. So we were involved from the very beginning. So to actually be able to bring my students on set and work with Ryan Coogler and his team and a full film crew. We shot a lot of BART stuff. So the first sequence we did was in the BART station in New Montgomery, right down the street. And we had to actually empty the BART train and have it come in at a certain time, and then we had to populate the BART train with people. So that was one thing, so we were actually able to be on set for that. And then we also went over to the Hayward, it's a maintenance area where the BART trains are just static, they don't move. And then we actually had to put moving backgrounds, like as if they're going to San Francisco and back. And so all those moving backgrounds had to be, and all the characters had to be extracted, and then the windows, because they're against the windows, and everything we did was outside the windows. And then having that,
as you explain it, it makes the most perfect sense, because you can't go, okay, can you just run the BART for us now?
No.
57 times for the next week?
No, they had to pay a lot of money to actually book the BART station and the tube. And then we also shot at Fruitvale Station at the actual point of the crime or of the incident that the movie's about. So that was super exciting to be involved. We're not always involved on the shoot. We try to be, and we've been on several, but that one was really great. So when we were doing the shots, we were on a really tight deadline. We were working pre-Sundance, like it was, Sundance is in January, and we were working all the way up to the end of the year, trying to get all the film finished and all the shots finished. And there were many, 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 many shots, and they were very difficult because they were shot on Super 16 film, which is very grainy, and having to extract and get reflections out of the windows and put them back in. It was very challenging, and the students got skills that they were ready to go to work.
Like a lifetime of skills in a week.
Oh yeah, because it was so difficult.
Nobody shoots film anymore, let alone.
Oh, I had to dig into all the deepest pocket tricks that I had to help them get those shots done. And that's the thing about StudioX, is that we, all of our StudioX classes are mentored by professionals and in all the different areas. And I'll let Sasha talk a little bit more about that. But so, I think a lot of other schools might, have projects going on, but these are very organized, and we have a pipeline. So we are mirroring the industry.
Right, and that's probably the most important part of any schooling and any class you're taking is, how's this going to help me when I graduate? And if you're doing it the right way, and Sasha, if you can talk about this, because the one question I wanted to ask you, you brought it up earlier, was, you're talking about artists, drawing and painting and creating a visual thing to see. And then you have this whole world of technicians where this cannot work without it. And those technicians don't necessarily have to be artistic or not who you would think would be the standard art school student.
I mean, and that's what I think mirrors our what we do in StudioX is that, we have people like in all the steps of the pipeline. There's really technical things that we have to work on, like we actually have to create 3D models of the big vehicles, or we did this music video with this big kaiju that was like insane, and one of our faculty members, Tarek, he actually designed it, and it's like so cool. And then we had to like sculpt it, make it in 3D, and there's an artistic standpoint to that, but then to actually rig it so that it's a puppet so it moves, while it's still artistic, it's very technical. And so like there's a lot of students that their minds work that way. And so they're using the technology and being very technical, but still doing art. And then animation is like, it kind of goes both ways. Like I think we see a lot of, and even visual effects, where we see a lot of students that they're very good at doing, like they have a great eye and they really make beautiful animation or composition or beautiful comps. And then we have the students that are very highly competent technically to like know how to tweak stuff so it makes it look real. Like Cathrine was saying, like we don't want to get pulled out of the shots or the sequence and think that, oh, that's, that's not believable. And so like it does take that, and that's why I love our program and I love our school, is because we're teaching the students all of these different things, and then they're moving to where they feel the most comfortable. And then we have some students that have come through too that are like programmers and scriptwriter, like scripting, like computer scripting, that have built tools for us to pull off some of the stuff that we've done.
Right, because I mean, cutting edge is kind of a strange thing to say, because it really is cutting edge. You're home brewing absolutely everything you're working on. You can't go off the shelf and just give me that program that does the thing because I'm ready to go now.
And that's I think the core of our industry has always been this. I mean, that's why we have the Ed Catmull who runs Pixar and Disney. While he's a computer scientist, he was working on the early Pixar films. But to get him to look that way. We see James Cameron, and that guy, I mean, his films are very cutting edge, because we're always trying to one-up ourselves with every show that we're doing. We always want to be like, okay, we learned from that, the next one's going to be better. And James Cameron has the mind where he's building new equipment.
Yeah, he's a scientist at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he builds like all new technology, and then we, we're learning it and we get the benefit of it. And then we're actually even coming up with our own sometimes to solve creative problems so that we have a really beautiful image.
I actually, to kind of add on to that, I feel like Sasha and I are both left brain, right brain people, even though she's the producer who's traditionally left-brained. I think that's right. And I'm the artist who's traditionally, right-brained. Visual effects, you're really both. And there are people who are, I call it a spectrum. Like I feel like I'm kind of on the creative spectrum a little more, but I still have the practical sort of like, this is what we need to do to get this done on time, and this is the way we're going to do it really efficiently.
I've got magic, but I have $7.
Right.
How's that going to work?
Right. And so I think that's what makes visual effects and animation so exciting, because you have then you have other people who are, they're in the very beginning of post-production, where they start like coming up. It's like if you're going to do an energy beam in space, right? That's very complex and that's physics, right? So that's science. So you have to figure out what the physics of the particles are doing in order to make it artistic and create it. So that's an example of somebody that might be ahead of time coming up with, they're using math and programming to make things move and change the way where they in the lifetime and all this stuff. So it's, I'd say Both of us are both. I don't mean to speak for you, but she's a creative person too. And I think that we use both those sides of ourselves every day.
Hey, just want to take a quick break to let you know that coming up on July 22nd, Sasha Korellis and StudioX are hosting a free webinar and classroom tour. Here you'll see what it's like to be part of the production team and see how producers, animators, artists, and designers come together to create their amazing work. The event is free and open to anyone interested in the VFX industry. You don't have to be a student of the Academy at all. Just click on the link in the show notes to sign up. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of Creative Mind. All right, so now we are coming back and we're going to get deeper into that whole left brain, right brain argument conversation. And Sasha's going to give us some examples of some of the projects you're working on right now that really showcase how the arts meet the technical into this great idea. What are some of the big projects you're working on?
We're actually working on this short film that is with a thesis graduate at DePaul University in Chicago. And it's called Mass Teleportation Authority. And it's exactly what Cathrine is talking about, where we have to kind of get into the science of things, because there's a whole sequence of the main character going through this teleportation device and going through what we call the void, and we call it the void sequence. And it's basically her just emoting on green screen, you know, like, oh.
How hard can that be to work with? Yeah.
And she's like, you know, confused and stuff. And so, and we have to figure out, with the director, we have to figure out, what does this void teleportation inside of a teleportation device look like?
You can't shoot that.
We can't shoot it. And so we've actually spent more time on design. So like this first part of it, of just designing it and figuring out what it looks like, so that, one, it doesn't look like just like 2001. Like, we're using all those things as references, but we have to create something new and different. And that's the thing about making films, is that we're constantly, you know, we can't just like recycle everything. So we have like some streaks going on. We have some like rocks and minerals that kind of go through, and then we have all this lighting effects that go through. And it took us a long time to get there, and it took a lot of artists and a lot of design time to do that, and a lot of technical work to make that look right, as well as if she really does look like she's in this void thing. And then it's very colorful, and then we put her in, and then we actually have to put all of that lighting on her, so she actually looks like she's in there and not just on a green screen.
Right, because I mean, that's the common thing that's been around, I mean, since video cameras.
Right.
You know, even before that we had process shots and back cutting at that. But, you know, green screen was the savior of everything. Shoot it on green, make it even, and somebody else will figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's still the case today. But there, like you're saying, how has that changed in the world of doing it right?
I think exactly. I think I'd also like to mention another project we're working on, where we're doing a swarm of butterflies, or flock of butterflies. And you think, oh, it's butterflies, it's pretty, easy peasy, you put them in. But it's actually, each one has to have their own path. And so that's very technical, the physics of doing a flock of butterflies. You know, some of them go in front of the character, some of them go behind, and you know, it's just, there's so many people involved in that pipeline. Somebody, you know, you might have a dynamics person who's doing a simulation, an automated simulation, which requires physics to make everything go in the right place. You might have a hero butterfly that needs a hand animator, somebody to animate it by hand with keyframes.
That's the one we're going to really focus on. This is the
keyframes.
Butterfly, the rest is copy paste.
Right, and then that's going into a live action background plate with a character in there that's interacting, and maybe the butterflies she might have to follow an eye line. The butterfly might have to follow her eye line. So I think the number one thing that we get from new clients who've never worked with visual effects and new students that are just learning is it's way more complicated. And it takes an army than one would think. And that's a big surprise to a lot of people, especially filmmakers who just think, oh, just throw them in there, you know.
Right. I have a butterfly thing on my phone. I can do that, right? I have that button in my Instagram filter.
Right. I can put bunny ears on my face, on my head, and you know, it's no problem. But no, to do it on a level that suspends disbelief on a big screen It takes an army, and I think we in StudioX want to mirror the industry in the way they do it, and that's why we do things the way we do. And the great thing also is that Sasha and I are working on real shows, and we're keeping our skills sharp.
I was going to say,
so
your IMDb credits are humbling to the rest of us here standing around going, I hope I don't say anything stupid and she ruins my name forever, because it's like, you've worked on things
I'm
like...
just really old.
Well, but things like Minority Report, Planet of the Apes, Star Wars Episode 1 and 2, you're kind of...
Funny, my proudest moments are as a visual effects supervisor working here in StudioX on the films with our film. I mean, those are the Beasts of Southern Wild, Fruitvale Station. That, for me, is what I'm most proud of. Because I had more of a hand in it, and also I was able to, have a crew and help them learn, and it's an incredibly rewarding position that I have. I also run the department, but I would, if I couldn't be in the trenches like that and working with students, and I think that's kind of an academy thing where we really are connected with our students, and we're really in the trenches with them, like helping them get better, as if we're on the job. And we're training them on the job.
And that's, I know for the student experience, that's the most important thing is, I'm coming here and from day one, you're pretty much working and you're throwing them in the pipeline. We're going to talk about the pipeline some more, we're going to talk about our lab. Explain this pipeline, because this is this big foreboding thing that, really needs, a breakdown so, people understand what goes into doing this as a career.
Well, I mean, the thing is that when people, think about animation, they're just literally thinking about the characters moving, or visual effects, and most people are like, oh yeah, it's big explosions, or big storms and big waves and stuff like that. But there's so much more to it. And that's where I think when people start to come in, they're like, oh, there's all these different aspects of what we do. First it's actually like designing everything and coming up with what the looks are, and figuring out what that's all going to be, and doing all that research, science and physics research first. I mean, the paper that was written for Inception is from the physics department that they worked with is insane, because they had to figure that out. And so we do similar things. And then we actually have to make all the assets, and then we have to make them look a certain way, and then we have to animate them to move them in a certain way, and then we need to comp them into the image so that it looks believable.
Right, that's the thing you keep saying. Is that what is it? The uncanny valley idea, where where you're constantly going. The last thing you want somebody to say when they watch a movie is like, yeah, the effects looked pretty good.
Yeah, I don't want them to say that.
It's like, oh, that was kind of a left-handed slap in the face. Thanks a lot.
We're happy when people don't even realize there are visual effects. And a lot of the films we work on are like that.
I mean, you talk very briefly. I mean, we've got some of those. I mean, they're art films. I mean, you have "I'm No Longer Here" that's an art film that you don't think about as
I mean, that's
having
and
visual effects.
And we did a lot of visual effects, but the thing is like with that film, where it's not like an Avengers thing, the visual effects that we did are absolutely pivotal from the story standpoint. Where he's in the main character happens to be involved or come upon a drive-by shooting, and that's his whole life changes at that moment. And so we actually had to do like all the blood splatter and all of that. It's pretty horrifying, and we had to make it look real, and that's not easy. Like you can't just throw a whole bunch of blood in and this and that, but it has to have physics as well. And so like that's an important, that even though it's like not, you wouldn't think of it as a visual effects, it's one of the most important shots in the whole film.
Yeah, and people don't know that they're not really getting shot, but at that moment they don't.
Yeah.
Because they,
you want that gap. Oh my God.
Because they're just in the story.
Yeah. And that's what Cathrine means. Like we judge everything by, is it pulling you out or not? And like we're always like, is it pulling me out, or am I still in it? And that's how we judge, and that's why everything needs to look that seamless. And that's why Cathrine is so great at her job, because she had to work on these big films, and she was in the Saber department, which was the ones that did that. And so even though we're working on student projects, we're putting out that level that we're not just doing effects and throwing it out and being like, yeah, I just put the thing together. Like, it's going through that Lucas VFX level of the students' work so that it looks like that, and that's why we...
So these effects supervisors and the people they're talking to are going, I know what you did now. I can see where the work was done that no one else can. This is your calling
and that's the thing.
card.
And like you'll see like through the breakdowns, the pipeline. I mean, that's the thing. That's why we do the breakdowns and in the demo reels, like so that you can see all of the pieces of how it makes the image. And I mean, you can go on YouTube and do VFX breakdowns and watch those for days, and then you're basically seeing what the magic is. Like, how did you get to that image and what all the things that went into it. When you start to pull everything apart, there's all of these different jobs, and that's why when you go to see these movies, you know, I think the final end game, I think the credits were as long as the movie.
20 minutes long of VFX, just scrolling. I think there's somebody in there.
I mean, so that's the thing. Like Cathrine says, it takes an army. It takes a metropolis, as I like to say too. It's not a village anymore.
Yeah. And that's homage to the movie.
Yeah, and that's that's why we love what we're doing, is because this is not filmmaking, VFX making, animation. It's not a individual art form. It is a social art form, and it requires teamwork and collaboration and understanding and
passion
problem solving and passion, and just really like going for it and digging. And that's really what we're doing in our program. And so basically how it works in our programs, even if you're coming in as a BA, you know, undergrad or grad, is that the first part of your program is that you're learning the skills. You're learning the software, you're learning the basics, you're kind of seeing what you like, where are you gravitating towards. Mm-hmm. And then once you've got a couple of years of that, or however, you know, like first part of your MFA, then you go right into the StudioX program. So then you can start applying it. And that's when it happens.
And that's what we think is special about our program, because, you know, I found when I first started here like 15 years ago that people were not finishing work. First of all, they would get frustrated because they couldn't solve the problem, and they would give up and try something else. Or they didn't have a film crew who could shoot quality footage for them. You know, like, you know, film crews have dollies and jibs and
they've got their own
specialists.
Crew
they have directors and DPs, directors of photography. I mean, they have people who are masters of the craft. So we're able to get that part done before, and that gets brought to the students so they can focus on their craft. And then we make them finish it. We make them take it to the finish line. I mean, you could say that a shot is never finished.
No film's finished. It's just abandoned.
And so that, to us, is so exciting, and it still kind of is unbelievable to me that we actually get any work done, because, you know, we're dealing with revolving crews for, you know, classes that, you know, people graduate, and we're dealing with, you know, variable schedules. Mm-hmm. And
international crews too. A lot of these films are not based in the U.S. at all.
But Luckily Sasha has you know, she made a film remotely with people all over the world, so she came in with that experience, which has really helped us be able to deal, especially going into the pandemic, because we felt like we could just, with her experience with filmmaking and my desire to stay current and to push the envelope, we felt like we transitioned into the pandemic like pretty seamlessly, because we were ready to do it and we were wanting to do it.
Well, I mean, that's a good place to take a break, because, you know, when we come back, I want to get deep into our lab. I want to get deep into how the pandemic was just, you know, another day at the office for most people when you're working on a computer and working remotely and being able to do all this. So when we come back, we'll break that down, how students can come in with a Chromebook and be creating, you know, what rivals multi-million-dollar films. So stick with us, and we will come back and talk more with Sasha and Cathrine.
The students at the Academy that now work at COSA are kind of a special circumstance, because we all came from StudioX. That's an amazing, amazing program they have. It's kind of proven by the fact that we're all here.
COSA has a great relationship with the Academy of Art, being an alumni. It's always great to see people come from there.
COSA VFX have multiple specialties. We do dynamics, we do motion graphics. We have kind of all the principles.
I work on Gotham a lot, which is a really awesome show, and I loved it before I even started working here. It's really exciting to be able to work on things that people I know watch. We've worked on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is another fun one that I enjoy, and recently finished up Stranger Things, which has been very well received.
I work on Minority Report, the TV show that was adapted through the movie. It's amazing. Everybody is talking about the shows that I just worked on last week. When I graduated, I was ready, I was disciplined. You know, world where there's huge client names and we're constantly working on stuff. In a week, you're supposed to turn around 6 different shows, and if it wasn't for Academy, I wouldn't have lasted.
I was there to learn how to learn. They taught me how to employ ideas in different ways. That is a much more important skill set than trying to learn any very specific technical nuance.
All right, so we are back and we're gonna get deeper into the concept of our lab here at the Academy and how the actual work begins. And Sasha and Cathrine are gonna give us some more in-depth walkthrough on what it means to actually be a working visual effects and 3D animator. And you were telling me, and some of the students have also said this, that this is real life. This is not a school version of it. This is as close to real life as it can be. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, so one of the things with StudioX that I love and what really is the backbone that Cathrine and I have created is that, you know, once the students, like I said earlier, that they get their skill set, even if they're just coming through some of their first, you know, level 1s and level 2s, we want them to get involved in StudioX right away. The sooner the better. Even if they're still working on their skills, because we have multiple levels of complex work. Mm-hmm. And so even if someone's coming in kind of as a junior, they start getting into the pipeline and kind of getting their legs. You know, they're getting kind of pre-trained. And then we are more students that have been around more for longer semesters. They all are kind of helping each other kind of move each other up and into the ranks, basically.
So you've got mentorships already beginning.
Oh, we're already beginning. And that's the thing too with StudioX is that they create their own very own professional networks here. And so there are VFX studios and animation studios in LA and around the world that it's literally StudioX people. And they know each other, and like if they're now higher up in the hierarchy in a studio, and they see they've been here with us and they've done the StudioX, they'll hire them because they know we've trained them.
You're already 3 steps ahead. They're ready to
always,
rock.
and that's the beauty of it is that they're really creating that. And we're getting to the point too with recruiting is that many of these studios know us now and know Cathrine and know myself and know the other instructors in StudioX, and they're calling us before pre-graduation.
Oh wow!
You know, even in before December, because they actually a lot of the shows come online in January, so they pre-hire in December, and so they'll be like, "Who's graduating? We'll take them all." And so that's the exciting part of it, and I think. You know, we're seeing that with the streaming services, there's just so much content being created, and us as consumers, we're hungry for content and we're hungry for good stories, and that's where that's why this industry is like really booming and exploding because there's a needs to get filled.
And I think we're taking the students further than a lot of schools because we're actually getting them ready for work right away. So they can go into a studio, they can start working on shots right away. They're productive. and they're paying their way, right? There's that, transition period that a lot of people have to go through when they get into the job. Well, we try to go further than that, so that it's like they're in an internship.
There's not 6 months of fumbling around trying to figure it out.
And they tell us, we ask them, we keep in touch with them, and they say, it really wasn't that different. It was, in some ways, I was working head to head with senior people because I knew the pipeline.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're working alone on your own work, it's not mirroring the industry, and you go in and you really don't know how to work in a pipeline.
And COVID was not a hindrance to this, really, because the school is famous for having a great international way of looking at things, where a lot of students come from overseas
And we love that
projects
about our
from
school.
overseas.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. I mean, how did COVID change anything, or what were you guys doing that made COVID just be like, whatever, just back to work, we're fine?
Well, I feel that that with bringing Sasha on board and her experience with remote filmmaking, she was doing that stuff, the kind of stuff we're doing now, even before COVID. So we were having students on Zoom, and they were in other countries or other states, but they were still participating in our pipeline. We could have dailies, because we use a web-based software called ShotGrid that allows anyone from all over the world to be in the same, basically, screening room, right? And so that is another thing. And then our lab, when COVID hit and we all just ended up basically vacating the school immediately, we knew that we had to shift right away to survive and to be able to be as operational, because we had films in production. We actually never ever had any kind of hiccup in the work coming in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, we have more work coming in than ever for StudioX, from outside and internally. So we decided, and I think there's another, one of our other StudioX mentors, Derek Flood, who's also our technology lead. He, Sasha and I, and Becky Johnson, our operations manager, we basically decided to pivot right away and figure out a way to work remotely.
And explain for people who don't really understand what
Well,
this is.
we had to bring our physical.
What is it?
Yeah, we had to bring our physical lab that's here, and to the people in their homes.
Okay, so the room full of computers, the room full of servers.
With all the software, we use high-end, expensive software. We need lots of processing power. We have a render farm, which allows people to render on multiple machines. Something that might take 2 weeks to render takes 2 hours.
Okay.
So all those things we had on campus, we had to have the exact same service given to the students no matter where they were in the world.
Okay, so they could take their computer at a cafe in Rome or Korea or somewhere and just seamlessly go back to work.
And the fact is that there's a lot of security issues that are involved with that a lot of studios weren't doing that before, but everybody had to. So we spoke to industry professionals to find out what they were using to access those computers in a studio like Pixar or ILM or MPC or whatever. And we ended up getting a software called Teradici, which allows students to log into our lab.
Okay.
Our lab.
Our lab, got it.
Yeah, and get all the power, all the software, as if they're sitting in a lab, but they're at home.
Or
they're in a cafe, or they're in,
And that's industry standard.
It is.
Really.
Yeah, and think of it this way, as your laptop can be a Chromebook. All you need is an internet access, and it's basically your laptop in front of you becomes a portal,
like a window,
into the desktop here. So you're actually, even though you're working here, your work is actually being done on the computer here.
I mean, we recommend that you have a monitor, and you can get a monitor pretty cheap, but that you have something you can really look at stuff with. But you don't have to buy a computer when you're here at the school, and you don't have to re-buy a computer when your computer gets outdated, because we update all of our computers every semester pretty much. So
it levels the playing field. What Cathrine usually says is that, because then students from any country, any socioeconomic background, if they've got this basic tool, if they're online, if they're on site, if they're virtual, if they're like a hybrid, everybody gets the same level of equipment, no matter where you are or who you are or what, how you're actually doing your school. And that's, to me, where I feel like that's the what differentiates ourselves.
It's a game changer, and we basically are plowing forward, pandemic or not. This is our new normal. Because what is amazing about it is that every student has the same opportunity and the same resources, no matter if they're fully online or on site or virtual, via Zoom. They all have the same chance, the same resources to create work on a professional level.
And the work that gets done, I mean, again, we've all seen it. When you look at the names, it's like, this seems like you've bridged the gap between school and professional, and
we expect the work to be better going forward because, like I said, most online students don't have a powerful computer like the ones we have in our labs.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they don't have access to all the different high-end software. So to us, it makes me, I'm kind of amazed how we ever operated before this, because it's sad that it took a global pandemic to change, but we were ready for it. And we pivoted fast. And we got through the year with very little downtime in terms of resources to the student because of the pandemic, purely because of the pandemic. And so I feel super proud of our team. We are an ensemble team in our department. We have lots of key people that work, and we're all team players, and we're all very passionate about being on the cutting edge. And really the most important thing for us is to see our students succeed. So that to us is why we're all here.
Yeah.
And our lab gives everybody the same chance to succeed.
Which is great. I mean, we talked about this a little bit, when you're doing international films, and you're talking about socioeconomic levels and where people are from, it's like, it is a story that you're telling. So if you have somebody from China, Korea, Japan, and maybe English is not their first language, they can come here and they're jumping right in, correct? There's no barrier to that.
I love coming to work every day, coming to StudioX, and we probably have the most diverse group of people working on films of any studio in the world. I mean, we have such a variety of people from different places, and it's such a pleasure because they bring so much of their culture and their, and it's beautiful to see people working together that they normally wouldn't work with.
Sure.
And actually, or to see people who would have withered up if they were working by themselves, to see them blossom and become leaders in this environment. That's amazing to me.
And I think that's the thing we always forget. I mean, when you work in an international environment, if you're lucky enough to work overseas, it takes you about a week to realize, oh, wait a second, there's movies in other countries. There's content in other countries.
We work on international films. Like we go
There's
after them.
There's a career in other places. It's not just, you don't just have to go to Hollywood,
I think
which is great, but you can work anywhere in the world.
I think we take a globalized approach to the industry because the industry is globalized, and we love the diversity of projects that we work on and the diversity of people that work on them, and the fact that everybody's got the same chance to succeed.
With that, how can students? Well, actually, I want to ask you a couple of things because I want to talk about the current projects, and I'll fix that segue in the edit. So, coming up, what are some of the projects that you're working on? What are some of the projects you're working on right now?
Right now, we actually, for the summer semester, we actually just got a whole bunch of shots on a feature film from a brand new director, again, named Matthew Gentile.
From AFI.
And he's from AFI. Okay. It's his first feature. He wrote it. It's called American Murder. And it's a true story about this very kind of, California surfer boy who actually did this big heist and actually murdered somebody and then has disappeared. And
he still hasn't been found.
And he still hasn't been found.
Oh, fun.
And so that's kind of like this, like where he got there, and then the FBI agent who's been chasing him, and the FBI agent is played by Ryan Philippe. And so that's really cool because we're doing it very quickly because they're going to be going out into the festivals really fast. So we're doing, with our summer crew right now, we're just doing like everyone's on board, and we're just getting through them as quickly as we can. And we've been working very closely with their editor, who's also, he works on big films. He's also from AFI, and he works on big films and as an assistant editor in Hollywood. And so we're really excited about that because that just means we've got another feature. We did Strawberry Mansion last summer, was our other feature, so we've got that in. We also have this really cool homegrown film called Aurora with one of our MFA students, and she basically it's a 3D animated film about a woman who is in a Arctic scenario, and they're doing like scientific things, and but we're creating it all in Unreal Engine, which is really the thing that's kind of changing the way, that's a gaming engine and the filmmaking engine, and they're coming together. And
those
really,
lines of video games and movies
it's
so blurred at this point.
This is going to be in a big explosion in terms of the way that we're making content because it's so fast. It's a real-time render.
And again, that's where the industry is definitely
and that's where it's going.
Yeah.
And there's a company here in town that we just had some recent grads go start to work with them, and they're doing really cutting edge with Unreal. And so we're collaborating with the game department, and we are, so this is going to be like a totally fresh thing, and all hands are on deck. Oh, wow. So we're actually doing, there's multiple classes that are working on that. And then we also are doing this really cool short film called Rat King. Okay. It's with, it's kind of, steampunk, but kind of like H.P. Lovecraft kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So it takes place in World War I. And basically it's Nick Walker is the director, and he's a big muckety-muck artist at Lucas. And so he built this big mechanical puppet of this rat, it's like a
metal spider.
Yeah, metal spider thing.
Steampunk monster with
Yeah,
gears
and it's cool.
and
So
ribbons.
wow. So, and he's he was mentored by Phil Tippett, and so Phil was actually Catherine. He's a big fan of Catherine, Phil Tippett.
I hope that's true.
It's totally true.
If he's scowling for a long time at you,
But
he's
we
a big fan
we
of
worked
yours.
with him on his own
and then
project.
as soon as she walks in the room, he lights up. It's amazing.
He puts down the Oscar and Mad God and just goes,
Oh,
"Catherine, come
don't
sit
publish
next to me."
that.
Basically that's being done. We're comping that, and the producer is one of our alums, Andy Wood, and he works down at Disney now, and that's actually going to be really cool because it's very dark and it's a little spooky, but the fact that we get to have this mech puppet and we're putting it into a live action plate and we're doing all the things with
We
it.
do lots of different types of things,
yeah.
which is so fun for us.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
It's going to be super cool. And then the other one is we're working with the Chinese Historical Society. We're doing this with David Goodwin and Games. And our department we're creating the 3D model of Bruce Lee. Very,
Yeah, this is a
very
massive
much like
project
him.
that's going on.
Yeah, and it's going through the family. So Shannon Lee has been looking at our work. So we're in the modeling phase. We're working on the hair. And then we're going to rig him, and we'll be doing some animation. And then the game department will be putting it into an interactive program.
Exhibit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool.
In Chinatown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have name dropped everything that will appeal to everyone. I mean, I want to sign up, and I seriously.
We have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And our students have a lot of fun, and we just love what we do. So.
And more importantly, I mean, this is the stuff this is what people are going to be doing for the next 20, 30 years. I mean,
Yeah, but
content
everything
has
we do
changed.
is indie, low budget indie, but we still get an amazing. We get access to up and coming filmmakers. Sasha was mentioning about the editor of American Murder and the director. Well, they come to class and they interact with the students. I tell them they may not get this when they go in the studios. They may not get to meet the director.
Right.
And, this is really like special times for them, that they get to be right in there and they get to ask questions. And we try to create a safe environment for them where they feel that they can make mistakes and then get back up and they're not, they're not going to get fired. They're not going to, we're just going to, and so that is also nice that it's a nurturing environment and we want people to succeed.
Yeah, because it's kind of a journeyman freelance
Yeah.
role once you're on your own.
Yeah.
It can be you need that network, that support to really feel, safe and protected and to do your best work.
And we try to be nice and
And we try to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I have to rein in the class sometimes because we'll start.
You mean you have to rein me in?
I gotta rein Cathrine in. But I think what's interesting about it is that even online, the thing with StudioX again, like it's such an architectural art form. So you're not able to like disappear or slip away because as soon as we kind of see that, we're like, hey, come back to us. And get them back involved, and so we're constantly circling people through. And the stuff that we've seen with some students that were, because as artists, every artist will know this, and incoming students will know this, is that, we're introverted and shy. I know it doesn't look like it but this, this has taken a lot of work for us to get into this place, but. We understand that we're introverted, shy, and awkward, and and they're coming in that way too. But we get that, and so we can all just be awkward together and have a good time, and that's what makes it fun.
And also that I hate to say the word force, but you have to engage. And you have to socialize.
You need the push.
Yeah.
The best teacher pushes you to where you are.
And you have to learn how to work with others.
Yeah.
And to play nice with others and to be a team player. And nobody teaches you that unless you're in that situation.
Yeah.
And school tends to be a vacuum experience, and we really don't want it to be that way because it's not serving the students. So, people that normally would be sitting in the back of the classroom and not saying a word, there's no way they have, and the socialization is part of the education.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so if you want to come to the school, coming to the school is easy. You can apply. There's open houses. You also have a couple of events that are rolling throughout the year. Tell me about those. Do you have the pre-college experience?
We have a pre-college program that's free.
Okay.
And I think you're going to be putting that information up for people to see. We have all sorts of classes, not just in our department, but all over the school, where you can take free classes in the summer or on Saturdays and they're also online classes.
And that's for high school students?
High school students only.
Okay.
And that they get to basically come in, and it's a low pressure learning environment. It's fun. And they get to come in and get a little taste of a craft. We have several classes. We have 3D modeling and character modeling classes. We have visual effects classes. We have animation classes in our department. We have VFX editing class.
Oh, wow. Because I think we're also now the generations have changed enough that now we can say, like, now my generation go, there is a living to be made in video games and movies and cartoons. That's a real living where my parents were like, what are you talking about?
Well, when I learned about the pre-college program, I said, this is too good to be true. How can this be free, and how can these students get? But obviously we want people to come to the school, but there's no obligation. And the thing is that this is something that Elisa and her father, initially, they feel very strongly about giving this to high school students and letting them experience our school before they come and deciding whether. And you have masters teaching these classes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. To wrap it up, where can we find where are the best places to really see the work that you're doing besides Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus and every streaming service and just going, oh, look at all that stuff. Where can we actually go and see some of the stuff directly with you?
Well, one thing is later this month in July, we're going to be doing an Inside StudioX. We do this every semester where people can come on Zoom. I talk about StudioX. Yeah, anybody. And I basically just kind of talk more about the program and show the demo reels and kind of the behind the scenes. And then we'll actually step into a StudioX class so that people can actually see what it's like. And we're online, so that actually makes it more easy. So everyone can come and look and see how we're how we're looking at dailies and what kind of notes we're looking at, and actually seeing the shows that we're working on. So that's going to be on July 22nd. And then the most frequent of what we're doing is our Instagram. We are constantly on it, and we're posting and talking about all the events that are coming up and all the new things and things that our alum are working on or have just finished, or the stuff that we're working on in StudioX as well. And that's the best right now. And then we have our Vimeo channel with all of our demo reels and the behind the scenes and our panel events. That we've been talking to a lot of people in the industry over the last year, and that's been just really great. A lot of people from our alum groups too that have been doing amazing things in the industry. Yeah.
All right, Cathrine Tate, Sasha Korellis, you ladies are wonderful, and again, this could not be any more impressive because this makes everybody want to just go, okay, yeah, I'm ready, let's do this. Let's go jump in and learn how to make the next big mechanical furry monster
I
thing.
hope so. Yeah, we love what we do.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
and there you go. So for anything you need to know about animation and visual effects, this is where you're going to come, and we've got all the links in all the show notes. And thank you for watching.
Each sequence will always have its own challenges. That's just the way this works. Visual effects are just that way. Everything is different. Every sequence is a new beast to be dealt with. For example, on the troop sequence, as well as on these wide-angle shots of the tent encampment, the camera was high up on the end of a crane boom, and it was a windy day. So as you can imagine, the crane boom is kind of moving a little bit in the wind, and you get this kind of high frequency jitter in the camera. Now the real challenge there was that these shots we were pulling multiple elements together, in some cases 7, 8, 9 elements.
One of the most challenging parts was figuring out what we were going to need, figuring out the unknown. We needed to mitigate between the script and the actual set to figure out what things were going to be needed, what if there are any displacement maps that are going to be needed, what kind of measurements, where the actors were going to be, and what kind of reference was really important, not because we had a very short time span. And trying to get that all done within a couple of days was a lot of running around and making sure that we had everything we needed. That way we weren't going to have to ever go back, because we really couldn't.
I think the best part of this project was working with such an incredibly talented group. We had some amazing artists on this project. They were dedicated, hardworking. The deadlines were tight, and there was a lot of work to do.